Going to be a very, very short lecture, I promise. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about some other aspects of the New Deal. One was that the Roosevelt was extremely popular at the beginning of the New Deal, but as the New Deal grew longer and longer, or as the Depression grew longer and longer, his popularity fell. He was reelected to office 3 times. To the poor, he was a hero, but the New Deal criticism and the criticism of FDR in particular became stronger and stronger as the Depression continued. Um, One of the most vocal opponents of the New Deal was Father Coughlin, who's a radio star, had his own radio show, kind of like Rush Limbaugh, those guys you hear on the radio today. He was a priest, a Catholic priest, but he railed against the New Deal. He hated the New Deal. He despised FDR. The thing that came to his sort of falling out was he began making anti-Jewish remarks, and when Hitler came to power in the early 1920s, the late 1920s, early 1930s, he was making a lot of remarks in support of Hitler. And when we found out exactly what Hitler was doing to the Jews and to other people, to gays, to blacks, to crippled, when he found out what he was doing to all these minority groups, he was kind of popularity fell and he was taken off the air. So you can kind of see that a lot of times these guys who ride a wave of national emotion end up falling off on their game, especially when they can't control what they're saying. Now this next guy, next slide, this next guy was not, he was actually someone who thought that FDR did not go far enough. He was the governor of Louisiana. He was a senator from Louisiana after that, and Huey Long wanted to redistribute the wealth. He wanted to collect all the wealth, and pretty much what a communist society would do. But the poor in Louisiana loved Huey Long, but wasn't very popular nationally. You know, one interesting thing about Huey Long was his redistribution of wealth policy was called "Every Man a King," and even though his politics were different than Father Coughlin, he aligned himself with Father Coughlin. Was getting ready to run against, as a Democrat, run against FDR in the 1936 election, but he was assassinated in 1935. Not everything FDR did was kosher and everyone loved. In fact, his biggest scandal was called the court packing scandal, where FDR, if you don't know, there are 9 Supreme Court justices. The Supreme Court often ruled against his policies and New Deal policies, so he'd have to get a New Deal policy knocked down and create a New Deal policy to take its place. So he decided he was going to put 15 Supreme Court justices. Now, the Constitution says there are 9. He wanted to expand it to 15. And he would get to pick the 6 who were going to be the new Supreme Court justice. So it's court packing. He would have a supermajority in the Supreme Court, and everything he liked or wanted to do would sail through the Supreme Court. And that's why the cartoon says, all together, yes, yes, they're all saying yes. Yes, men, as they would say back then. His effort failed. Congress, even the Democrats thought this was he was a Democrat. Even the Democrats thought this was a reach for FDR. And it became kind of a scandal that this was proof to everybody in the country. This guy was trying to get too much power. He was trying to control the third branch of the government, the Supreme Court. Next slide. In 1937, the country had gone into a depression, right? So here we can see the depression. But we began to recover from the depression. In 1937, we slipped back into a new recession. And this was a problem because a recession is a slow period of economic growth and business. So when we thought we were getting out of the recession, the whole country getting out of the depression, the whole country began to slip back into a recession. The national debt began to rise. That worried a lot of people in this country. And that is there's a couple more slides here we'll go through, but that is the end of this section.